I'm Kathy Weiss. I got Andy over a year ago. I'm so thrilled that he's here. Just as a show of hands, who in this room has taken from him, has bought a piece of his art, has taken, even done a workshop? Show of hands. We had to have you. And I'm so glad you're here. This format's going to be completely different than anything we've done before. We're going to sit here. So I suggest maybe if you want to move, there's seats over here. And you can get up and walk around and come in that door if you want to. Or you can just walk through here, it doesn't matter. But we're going to be sort of here. I'm going to be like Barbara Walters. Barbara Wawa. And we have some visuals that he and I have had a lot of hours together recently, and we've cultivated some work to help describe this creative genius we have sitting here. And we don't have mics, so I'm hoping, I was told the acoustics in this area. Can you guys hear? Yeah. You hear? Yeah. Well, good, then we're good. So we have some slides to sort of organize our thoughts, because Andy's like a fire hose of information, you know? It's hard to, I told him I can't bottle up everything he knows in this hour, but we have some slides that'll help organize us. And please, come up. You know.
Thank you, guys.
Are you comfortable there?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. I've been in Charlotte since 1988, I guess. And I had an entire life, an artistic life before I came to Charlotte that had nothing to do with landscape painting. That's where we're going to start with that. And the reason I wanted to start with that is that, well, it just shows the evolution of the city. I was a visiting artist in 1984 to 1988 in the state of North Carolina, and I got hired because the guy in Edgecombe County thought I must be gay because I was 38 years old and an itinerant artist. So, and I don't think he knew I was a painter either. But that was how things started in North Carolina. North Carolina has a wonderful literary history and a wonderful musical history, but its visual history is lacking. And other than Brian Ruthberg and Jasper Johns, and maybe that sculptor from Lancaster, I can't remember his name. There are very few people who have gotten out of the South.
But you started in Wyoming.
Well, I was born there. That's just more about my parents.
But tell us a little bit about your before you came here.
Well, we will. We'll start there. We're all about the same age, I hope. I'll speak up for those who are our age. When I graduated from high school in 1968, the world was kind of like the world is right now. We had Vietnam going on. There was a lot of. But then by the time I graduated from college, it was such an optimistic world. If you were a white man, there was nothing to stop you. Nothing. I never thought about decisions about art. I was going to be a pre-law English major, and I took a drawing class, and this is it 50 years later. And that stupidity of that is something that couldn't exist today. I think the success that's interwoven with that stupidity, there just isn't the underpinning architecture and support to help stupid artists. There's just a lot of luck that goes into this. And those of you who are still painting, I'm really happy and proud of you, because it takes, as you know, it takes a lot of time. You have to dedicate yourself. You wake up every day, and you figure out the time to do it. And it's very, it's a very selfish kind of life pursuit that other people find noble, but it's really just our selfishness. And it's nice that other people find it noble. So this started back in, I guess, in the 70s. I was really loved painting, and I was so optimistic as to think that I was going to make an impact on the world of art. Time magazine had 2 artists on the cover something in the previous decade for that. So Clifford Still and Jackson Pollock were both on the cover of Time. So that's amazing when you think about it. The power that art had over society, static art had over society, and that's changed a lot. Now it's a whole different art form. And what we all do is buggy whip work. You know, this is, I don't know that our kids or grandkids are going to want our work. You know, it's like a grandma's china. So we're even more selfish. You know, this is, and they certainly don't want to spend the money that's required to buy these things. So it's fascinating how we, as artists, are going to deal with the future and how we're going to. But we have to ignore that. You know, we have to just, because we want to paint, this is what we want to do. And so in taking that naivete, I was an abstract painter, caulk guns and big paintings. So. That's actually more recent, but yeah. Materials, so we've always used different materials. We've got a whole bunch of work that's coming up behind me that I can't see, so. But I got accepted into a really prestigious thing in Maryland called the Maryland Biennial, which was like a tri-state area. That's a 20-some-year-old. And so I was really on this fast track, I thought. By the time I moved to Charlotte, I'd had 25 years of abstract painting, and I was represented in a lot of different galleries across the country, and got some real critical acclaim. But I moved here, fell in love with that woman over there, Carol, and her family, and I couldn't afford to do that. You know, I just couldn't afford it. Even though it was a critical success, I wasn't a financial success. So over a period of lucky transitions, that changed. There was anyone who remembers Pink Floyd, there was a line in Wish You Were Here where he's reminiscing over a lost band member, and he said, you know, something like, you use the excuse to, you left a walk-on role in the war to take a leading role in the cage. And I did that. I left a walk-on role in the war, which is what art was in the 70s. In order to be successful and recognized, a huge amount of luck, a huge amount of, in college, one of the reasons to go to graduate school would be to get employed as a teacher. And those jobs were really very coveted. And so in order to get recognized, I had one of the people in our class, she was a woman, she went in naked with her dress made out of slides. Remember slides? That's how we showed our work, slides. She said, well, maybe they'll pick the right slides, they'll be strategically planned. And you know, this was how, I had a show in Adams Morgan area of Washington, D.C. at the Olshansky, and it was a real pivotal show for me. It was a group of work that this work is born out of.
Tell us about the Kennedy Center and the experience there.
I'll get there, yeah. So there was this show at the Olshansky, and I was really happy about it. And Joseph Hirshhorn, one of his guys, had seen it. The Hirshhorn Museum wasn't open yet, but it was being built, and he was one of the last kingmakers. And he had actually made an appointment to come see my studio. A lot of these things had happened, and some guy came to the studio and said, I'll take everything you've got.
Wow.
And I said, well, that's exciting. But he said, but I'll only pay you like 10 cents on the dollar. And I go, well, I weighed, you know, how much my debts were and how much 10 cents on the dollar. And I was foolish enough to say yes. And he had a truck with him. They loaded the stuff up. And I said, well, how am I going to get
These are pieces like these, the geometrics?
Yeah, a little earlier than that. It was something from the Alluvial Plain series. When you're in these different artist groups, you meet different people, and two of them were NASA photographers, ended up being NASA photographers. So I had access to satellite documentation of islands moving down the river, one of the, I forget the Mars mission things, but the planet of Mars taken from a satellite. And it's so cool. There's something, the satellite goes around the planet and it shoots film. It takes this long strip of film, and then they feed it into a computer, and the computer assembles it. And then an area where there's no information is it's this black geometric shape, and the caption is no data exists for this area. And there's so much data in just that description of what that was. 2 years I worked on that black little shape. And this is what art used to be. You know, it was an idea And I'll finish that story. So I never got paid for that. And he said, I'll give you my Rolex watch. And I said, okay, great. And I'll take that. Carol can attest.
True story.
I'm very, very open and very naive. And I was living with a different woman then, or engaged to her, I can't remember which. And I was so upset when the reality hit me that I wasn't going to get paid, that I took the only payment I had and threw it against the wall and broke that. And then that was in the...
But it wasn't a Rolex.
I'm sorry?
It wasn't a Rolex. You didn't tell that from...
I don't remember that. What was it?
It was a cheap watch that they would
That's my wife. Years later, I'm in the representative in the gallery in Santa Fe, and a woman walks in and says, I've got a basement full of his work. And I said, well, Bob and Debbie were the people in the gallery. I said, look, whatever you do, don't tell them I know that she does, but have her send you a piece, or have her send you some of the stuff so you can tell her you're going to sell it. And she never heard from her again. But it was it's interesting how these connect so close in so many different places. One of them, as a young man, again, a grunt, was in another visiting artist program, and Jamie Wyeth, Andrew Wyeth's son, and Andy Warhol were coming in to do a demonstration, a week-long program. And I was like the head grunt. They asked me to get in the center program and asked me to be the sous chef for these guys. And I said, sure, this is very cool. So at the beginning, going in there, I thought that Jamie Wyeth was just a landscape painter, and he was a mediocre landscape. Well, he's a good landscape. And Andy Warhol was like a name. He was a breaking name. So he was impacting art. Jamie Wyeth was making pretty pictures, but he wasn't impacting art. And so I really had this bias against Jamie, and this real positive thing about Andy. And then after the weekend was over, the opposite had flipped completely. Warhol spent his time in the closet until the 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock news came on. Then he took his wig and straightened it and came out of the closet and gave a little thing in front of the news cameras. And Jamie came to this thing and came with his wife, who had some physical disability that allowed him to have a mistress and a daughter. Oh. Jamie and these three women walked in the whole weekend, and they were working diligently. And my whole idea of these people flipped over in that one period of time. When I was in college, the East Wing of the National Gallery had just opened up, and so I was invited to go to the opening of the East Wing. So I got to meet all these great David Smith, incredible artists that you just dream about. And I forget this guy's name, but he was a big name at the time. He had a mural that's as big as the Hicks mural, the Hicks tapestry at the other Mint. Huge thing. And he'd never seen it before. He had sent a little 6-foot painting to some weavers somewhere in Italy, and they wove this incredible thing that's hanging in the East Wing of the National Gallery, and he'd never seen it. And I was staying with him, and he was just admiring. He said, wow, that's really nice. And this is what art was back in the 70s.
So we talked a little bit about why you came to Charlotte and what you did when you first...
Yeah, this is it.
We're moving on to the move to Charlotte, so...
Okay. So Jerry Melber picks me up as an abstract artist. And, so I'm with him for a while. And we were good friends. We played poker and racquetball and stuff. He's kind of bipolar, and he's a hard guy to live with. And he lost a lot of framers and things. But
Who?
He lost a lot of framers. People
No, who were you talking about?
Oh, nobody. And so he I ended up leaving him for personal reasons.
But you did a residency or something, right?
No, I came here, not as a resident, I came here, he picked me up as an artist. And
Okay.
And back then, I'll explain this real quickly. Back then, an art gallery handled a group of artists. They had 12 or 13 artists. They were their main stable, they were called. And they had one show a month, and then enough of a subgroup that they'd sell to the rest of the people. And for a lot of these galleries, like the Fagel Gallery, and I was like in the subgroup. And then for others, like in the Rogers Taylor Gallery, I was in the subgroup. But for Melberg and these other galleries, I was in the top tier group. And so they would represent the artists. They would not just sell their work like today, like they're not vendors. They would take the artists, they'd place their work in museums, they'd help them get build their resumes up so their work became valuable.
Like agents.
Yeah, they were agents. They were provocateurs. They were people who, because they had an interest in us. You know, as our work got more valuable than theirs, and so it was fascinating. That's what galleries were. That was the idea. Now they're just Macy's. You know, it's like come in and buy them, which is fine. You know, I'm not getting wrong, but that's a whole different idea. And so I came to Charlotte and was picked up as one of the stable artists for Melbourne. And yeah, I'm thrilled about that. I remember Carol tells the story. I don't really remember it, but I met Carol at her house. Another story. And I called her up and I said I'd like to go out for a date. And she said, okay. And I said, but I've got this big show coming up with Melbourne. I won't be able to see you for about 2 weeks. And she said, well, she's something, you have to finish that one, Carol. But
I basically said, you know, why did you call me if you're not available for such said, you know, thanks a lot, but no, no thanks. So then the day later, you called back and said, well, I've had an opening here, so I might.
Fight hard to get. So, you know, so I get to Charlotte, I'm with Melbourne, I'm living, you know, and at the time you don't make any money. You know, you sell work, you can afford to eat. If you don't sell work, you can't afford to eat. And it's fascinating. And yet, if you get a job, you can't really produce work. So I was really fortunate over the years to have people who employed me for groups of time. I had an electrician hire me in Baltimore for whenever I needed money. He'd send me on a job, and I'd get paid, and I'd go pay for 6 months. I had a job in a dart bar in Laurel, Maryland, which left me with this incredible capacity to throw good darts, and a great capacity for beer, but no other skills. But these were the kind of jobs you had, and so when Carol and I met Carol that same year. It was 1988, and it wasn't until maybe 7 years later that we got married. In that period of time, I was still a non-representational painter, and I really wanted to get married. This is how I tell the story. Carol tells it differently. But I couldn't afford to do it. It was just one of those things where I just couldn't afford to get married, and I didn't know how I was going to do that. And I said to myself that this is where the "Wish You Were Here" from Pink Floyd comes in. Most great artists have made their impact by the time they're my age. I'm 40, in 88, I'm 48, no, 38. 50, yeah, I'm 38 in 88. So, you know, if you're 40 years old and you hadn't had the impact you're going to have, you're not going to have it. And
Okay, we can all leave.
I didn't want it. You know, this is where I left a role in the war to be, you know, a leading role in the cage. I couldn't do what I did in Charlotte in another town. A community college or the continuing education classes would have filled the role that I filled. The fact that they didn't have anything here, which was a negative, was my positive. And I wanted to have an impact in the art world, and little did I know that leaving that track and doing what I did was what allowed me to get a role in the art world.
And did you want to add some, elaborate more on what Melbourne did to Charlotte, impact of Melbourne?
I did. Jerry's changed the city. He went to Bob Jones University of all things. He was a docent at the Mint. He was a curator for contemporary art. And he and Herb Jackson struck up a deal, and with Herb's help, he opened up Melbourne Gallery, and then with the contacts he made at the Mint, this Mint, he would, before the other Mint was built. By the way, the other Mint, Linda told me the Caravaggio exhibit is opening up next week. Get tickets. That's a must-see. If you're a painter, he's one of the pivotal artists. Frank Stella wrote a series of essays that he gave at Princeton called Working Spaces. And in it is about a 10-page essay about how Caravaggio was the father of contemporary art. Because you no longer had to know what you were painting, you just had to know how light hit what you were painting. Which means that you were painting concepts for the first time. That's what this work is about. So art back then, you'd have a concept and you would produce off of this, it was out of your mind based on your intellectual understanding of the concept. Now we're making pictures and it's a very different selling point. But I paint the same way I did then, which is what this illustrates what the drawing board's about. I make shapes and I find transitions across them the same way, and sometimes you go into it, sometimes you go out of it, sometimes you bounce off of it. It's just how you respond to that surface is abstract art. The fact that the edges happen to be the side of a barn or a tree or water is purely a selling tool. For me, and I don't mean money selling. I mean you convince, it's a title that gives people a handle to what you're looking at. You look at something like this and there's no title, there's no handle on it. This happens to come from that no data series from the Seattle rotation around planet Mars and these areas that were. It's just so then you get an idea, you get a design concept, and then based on your understanding of nature and how much you see in nature and how you respond to that, and based on your facility with your materials, you begin to find something that's unique, that's you. And as you get more facile with the tools, you find deeper things to be intrigued about. And this is a growing process. This is why I'm so damned excited about art, because it has nothing to do with making pictures. It's all about this process of getting an idea from anywhere. It doesn't matter where you get it from. You know, from Wyoming, and this is where this comes to play. Anytime you paint a vista, you're very predictable. It's very pedestrian work. If too many people like what I do, Carol hates me when I say this. If too many people like what I do, I'm doing something wrong. And she says, no, you're doing something right, because they'll buy it. But in fact, you know, in terms of that process, in terms of keeping that curiosity going, if I was just making paintings, I'd have been bored a long time ago. But in terms of that curiosity of exploring the world around us, this is a way of doing it. It's just, it's a visual way. And so I got lost.
You were going to talk about Melberg's impact, but that's
yeah.
okay.
So Jerry brought Motherwell, Robert Motherwell, Picasso. He now has the estate of a terrible painter, but a great teacher. Hans Hofmann is probably one of these artists like Caravaggio had a big impact on all other artists. His paintings, but he has the estate. He handles all of what's left of his work. Melberg is the only true art dealer in the city. In terms of dealing, in terms of understanding, you know, like if you wanted to buy a Chuck Close, you'd go to Melberg and he'd get it for you. Jerry had this control and this impact, and so and that was very helpful to me when I started. Carol talked me into. I made the mistake of part of this getting married was to. I was a pre-law English major, so when I wanted to get married to Carol, I sat for the LSATs and got accepted to law school, and I was going to. There was no law school in Charlotte at the time, and I was going to commute to Raleigh, and she said, no, that doesn't make sense. She said, why don't you, I ended up, it's a lateral transfer. I taught 2 years at Piedmont Open Middle School. I taught science because I had a physics minor in college. They weren't, in the 60s, our teachers weren't teaching you stuff. They were covering you in paint, you were rolling on a canvas. And if you wanted to learn about how pigments worked and how anatomy was, you took a nursing class. If you wanted to learn about, yes, I took anatomy. I got a lot of things. Anatomy through the nursing program. I learned about light and through the physics program. And it's just this is how you learn if you wanted to. College is a great place. There was a guy named Eugene McCarthy who taught. I went to the University of Maryland. Eugene McCarthy taught a poetry class there. You know, it's insane. You know, a guy named. Let's go back to Hirschman real quick. There's a guy named, the first show at the Hirschman was a guy named, I can't remember the first, RJ or JR Taj. And there were two shows, one upstairs, one downstairs. The other guy's name was Gregory Gillespie. And both of them were interested in breaking the surface of the canvas. Taj did it visually. He did like stairwells that go into this canvas and windows that opened it up. And they were the idea of breaking the plastic surface of the canvas. The term plastic surface doesn't mean like plastic, it means like plastic surgery. Pliable surface. So you go into the canvas, you come out of the canvas. Gregory Gillespie actually cut holes in the panels and would do these things that would reveal bits of information.
That comes later.
It was just fascinating how these concepts drove artwork. You know, it was like not pictures that drove artwork, it was ideas. And so to each of you here that is a painter, an artist, you don't want to paint pictures. You want to find an excuse to. You want to have an idea or curiosity first, and you want to find a way to explore that curiosity. Doris just said they're having a show, and the theme for the show is transition. So, you know, when you get to some of my landscape work, which I didn't even start doing till. Do you remember Connie Winters? Connie. Well, I opened. Carol talked me into opening this quitting Piedmont Middle School and opening up a teaching studio. And so I did that, and I was teaching figure classes and abstract painting, and met some neat people. But Connie came to one of the figure classes, and she asked me to come to France with her and someone named Cher Gosper teach in France, so plein air painting. I said, I'm not a plein air painter. And she said, no, but you're a good teacher, so I learned. And it took me about 10 years to make that transition from being a critically successful abstract artist who couldn't buy dinner to a representational abstract landscape painter who could buy all the dinners I wanted to.
So I want to talk about that because you had talked about the need for financial support, right, to get married, and you were getting big Rolexes for the work that you had. So then your art has transitioned into something that's more. It's giving you more sales. So talk about the gallery experience.
The image has changed to the lay person, but the process hasn't changed.
There's some other ones here.
Yeah, that's a huge piece. If you haven't seen it yet, that's probably 12 feet by 8 feet, something like that.
Where is it?
A woman named Allison Chambers and her husband bought that piece. She's another really good artist in town.
But talk about how your work has transitioned, how it's changed. Working with galleries, and you talked about the golden handcuffs.
Yeah. So this is a concept that we're all very aware of. You go to a studio, you get an idea, people like it, you want to do it again, you want to do it again, you want to do it again. So I've been represented in Santa Fe. A couple comes in from Seattle. They like a painting, they buy it, they bring it home. One of their neighbors comes into their house in Seattle and says, I like that, where'd you get it? I got it in Santa Fe. 6 years later, that another couple is in Santa Fe. They walk into that gallery, they want to see that same painting. That's how we become successful. That's how we become branded and become collectibles.
Which is good and bad.
It's the enemy of feeling. It's the enemy of emotion. If we work this hard and we set up this much time to be good at something, we might as well get paid for it. And if you're going to do that and not get paid, you might as well not do it. You might as well go for a bank. And so if you're painting the same thing over and over and over again and finding that it's tiring, you don't have any ideas, you aren't making enough, it's not as exciting.
Or it becomes mass-produced almost, right?
Yeah,
because you're just producing within the constraints
this is
of
another little
the
story
gallery, right?
That is really embarrassing to me. I mean, so many of these things are good. So I'm represented by this gallery in Santa Fe. I think I'm hot shit. Sorry, I'm hot stuff. And I hire someone to help me do this because I'm going to go to another gallery and I'm already changed my style. I can't stay in this style. So the only way I could paint a different way would be to have a different gallery handle me. Or Josh Brown, Josh at Shane, he changed from those animal paintings or people paintings, and he changed his name, so he was able to sell under one name or sell under another.
Oh, I didn't know he changed his name.
Oh, I'm sorry. And so this is the only way that you can make a living is if you found someone to handle this work, because the client doesn't want to know that you're an artist. They want you to be a performer. The analogy I use is the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. The Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, bless his heart, that's a Southern phrase, I learned that. Bless his heart. He's still doing incredible performances at about 80-some, 70-some years old, and because he gets his jollies from performance. And this world of sales and clicks makes us performers. The Beatles, they took the entire world of music with them. They changed and they took the world with them. That's what we want to do. That's what I want to do. That's what you should want to do when you're painting. You're not going to try to fit into what the world wants, because then you're a performer, and you might as well do something that pays better. Anything. number of hours. I mean, what do you put, 10 hours, 15 hours, 200 hours in a painting, and somebody looks at it in 100th of a second, they like it, they don't like it, they're gonna, you know, how much are they gonna spend for it? It's like, oh, everybody paid pennies on the dollar, or pennies on the hour. So if that's your life, then you're stupid. So, I gotta find another way to say that, but you understand the futility of that. So you have to find, but we have to make a living.
Right, so there's the, do you want to make the living or do you want to change the world and try to change the world? You may not be successful.
One of the
And you
reasons-
also said that the lay person in the gallery is telling you what to paint now,
Yep.
right?
Well, because they buy. Yeah. So if someone who doesn't know art and does want a decoration, they buy your piece. Somewhere you get this pressure to sell more and more of this mediocre art, and so because it's anyway. So I never thought that landscape art was art. Never. I still don't. It's something my grandparents.
But you do it.
do it. So my entire next 25 years, the first 25 years of my painting life, I was doing the abstract work. The next 25 years I was doing this, and it was no transition for me. I got to use more color, and I got to use this. It was the same process. It took me a decade to make that transition and to leave the world of Connie and drawing pictures to the world of learning what I learned for 26 years of abstract painting and making art with landscapes. And the problem with doing abstract landscapes is that it so easily turns into pottery barn work. You know, it's like, I cannot tell you where that edge is, but it instantly, you go too far in one direction and it's pottery barn, you go the other way and it's very creative.
So can you save it and turn it into?
It's your brain you can't save. You can change the art, but your brain is sunk.
Okay.
I can use the toilet, it's going down. There's no way to reclaim it. And because we get sucked into the world of acceptance. And the creative process is separate from the creative.
Okay, so you brought up an interesting concept about the gallery wanting a consistent body of work.
Yeah.
And you had said sometimes that's not the best thing to do because they should see the transition over time of your work.
That's what the gallery of the old, the gallery of yore used to be that.
Okay.
They were interested in the artist.
Okay.
And there was.
So how do you break out of that if you get accepted by a gallery?
Yeah.
Many of us are either in galleries or want to be in galleries.
I've been
How do you break out of that?
I've been very lucky to be successful in different venues and different styles. And part of that is my ability to change from one gallery to another gallery. And I've been in
Multiple galleries.
every gallery in Charlotte. Hodges Taylor, Jerry Melberg, Shane, Debbie, I don't know her last name, I didn't even her theater, Allison Sprague.
Debbie Bassett.
Yeah, if you name it, I've been in that for one reason or another. And usually it marks a change in my style. And Gallery A can't sell a work because they want to see that work. Gallery B is excited because you've got some kind of reputation there. Anyway, so you've got to find a way as an artist to continually grow and create, and at the same time find, if you're a musician and you've got a riff, you know, you can be creative, and when you run into a problem, you can pull back and understand your blues sequence, your blues segment of this. You can fill it in. There's the performance part that you've learned, and every time you paint, you're teaching yourself something. Every time you repeat that, you're performing that exercise. And so the trick is to learn how to continually teach yourself something instead of just performing it. If you're just performing it, then you're in this toilet. If you can teach yourself, every day you go into the studio, every time you sit down to paint, you have a question and you're answering visually, and you're going to try to answer that question. And you can't do it intellectually. The question is an intellectual question, but the result is a visual result, and you have to look at that result and say, is this... As painters, we have these two people on our shoulders, and there's no in between. If you have an intention and you put a brush down and you make that intention, you're great. Where are the cameras? If you have an intention and it doesn't work, you suck. You might as well go, you have no talent. And this is how we paint, and it's really frustrating. Because we don't know how good what we've done is until the next day or 3 days later or a month later. So you have to learn how to be open to magic, be open to the unpredictable, to be so much in the moment that stuff can happen that is not in your control. Michael Crichton's dead. All the great painters, everybody's good is dead. But Michael Crichton was a wonderful, I think he had a law degree and a medical degree. He ended up writing a bunch of great things, The Andromeda Strain, Jaws, not Jaws, Jurassic Park, all that stuff was out of the brain of Michael Crichton. He also wrote 2 nonfiction books. One was about the great train robbery in London, and the other was about non-fictional biography of Jasper Johns. I don't know why I did that. But in that biography, you should get it and read it, it's really good. He quotes Jasper Johns as saying he tries to surprise himself every time he paints. Think about it, if you're a painter, surprise yourself. What does that mean? Picking a different color, trying something with your eyes closed, I don't know.
And I asked you, how do you know when something's done? And you said, if I set out to learn something, I'm gonna keep going until I felt I learned it, right?
And that usually can go.
And you said you would destroy your painting, but you still wanted to learn something.
Well, that's where the body of work comes in. You know, and this is just a hint for people who are looking to be represented. As painters, we make these jumps, and the younger you are, the bigger the jumps. The older you are, hell, changing a brush size is a big jump. So, you know, when you're young, you can get these big concepts. When you've been painting for 20, 30, 40 years, then, you know, changing shoes is a huge deal. And so, if you look at every art history book, and you pick Picasso, there may be Mademoiselle d'Avignon, let's see, maybe 3 pieces that are in every art history book. You pick Cézanne, it could be any one of 50 paintings.
Turn it around.
And that's upside down.
It's upside down. It's upside down.
So if you pick a Cézanne, there could be any one of 50 paintings in the history, in the art history book, because he grew and he changed and he didn't. We don't know the differences as lay people. We don't know the differences as artists. We know Caravaggio is one of the breakthrough artists. David Hockney is one of the breakthrough artists. Frank Stella, who praises David Hockney as a breakthrough artist. These guys have changed how artists look at the world around them. And they figured out how to change and grow and keep their fan base.
So can you be branded by a gallery and still keep changing?
No.
Okay.
You can, but you have to hire out. You get someone else to do the work for you, sign it. And Truly's never made a piece of glass in 30 years.
Really?
Oh, no, this is just, once you're a collectible, you have to train people to be your people.
Wow.
And that's the way to do it.
What was that again?
If you're trying to make a collectible, and once you get accepted, once you're a Chippendale or a Chihuly then you're no longer making work. James Patterson probably hasn't written a book in like 20 years. It's like he has people write his books and he signs them. This is like, he helps them, I'm sure. But this is what art has become.
Production.
This is what financially successful art has become. And so we are, I hope, in a position, if you can take one of my classes, you don't need to sell painting. If you can afford to take a class, you've got enough money. Right? Yeah. So I think you're setting this time around, if you're taking this class, don't try to be normal. Don't try to be predictable. Try to figure out what you can do uniquely that's natural for you, that isn't work. Like
Where the heck are we?
the mistakes.
Oh, before we move on to the school, the studio,
Go ahead.
I just want to talk about Connie's influence and then your influence in doing figures. So I have a couple.
Yeah. Figures are the one thing that stayed static in my life. I've done that. I've been painting for 50 years. I've done 50 years of figures. About every 3 or 4 months, I hire a model to come in and I just spend a day to draw. And it's not making art. It's just eye-hand coordination, see and respond. It takes 3 days before your hand is where your eye is. After you painted for a long time, you just it's working out of your head so much that you've lost this capacity to. Does anyone here have a dog? At the end of the day, at the end of the studio day, when you're tired, take your dog into the backyard and for 10 minutes, try to be a dog. Try to just hear the rustle and turn to see what it is. Smell something and look to see it. Be in the moment rather than in your head. And when you have the figure, that's what you are. You're seeing and responding. And it takes hours before your eye and your hand are connected. And once they're connected, then you're not thinking anymore. And it's magical. And you need that figurative work to keep your eye-hand coordination at such a point where you can be creative and not have to judge what you do to painting. I can now, after decades, I can flip the switch. I can get there instantaneously. But it takes a long time to do that. And I'm not, and I have, thankfully, I have a family and a supportive family that takes care of a lot of, they accept the fact that I don't know how to get dressed. And they accept the fact that I do stupid things because I'm not thinking. And they help me, so most of the time, they help me without judgment and just say that, well, that's Andy. And if you aren't that, if you don't have that support, then your life is hard for you. Because it's hard to be in the moment and survive in society. It's hard.
So we brought up the studio.
Yeah.
And we brought up how expensive it is and the fact that we don't expect to paint. But, okay, sell your work. You get people super motivated about painting when they're there, right? I mean, everyone here who took courses, you're super motivated. And how do you do that?
I love it. So you just transfer love, and you love people enough to see what they're missing that day, and try to read people well enough to fill that void. I can't do it in anything but art. I can see what they're doing and see where they're hesitating, what's wrong, and where they need confidence. And once I can't do it in how they dress or who they vote for, or I don't see any of that. But if I see work, I know where your problems are, where your successes are. And then I look for, if you have problems, I work with your problems. If you have successes, I show you your successes. And that's, so let me go on. This easel here. I'm sorry, I work on it. We don't have enough time. But I want you to see this for just a second. So I've got this abstract floral class now. And so people think that all this means I can be really loose and paint flowers a lot of color. It's not that at all. So what you do if you know music at all, if you listen to music, then artwork is a band. And when you start to, when you get I can't see this art, I'm trying to plug. So this is form. This is form. I try to work in a square format because it's hard to screw up the square, the center of the subject. There's always the center. So the first thing you do is create a rhythm, the drum or the rhythm guitar. And that's your dark shapes. So if you're doing a floral, abstract floral, you may have a light here, which means there's dark here to create that light. You may have an edge here, and you need a straight line in order for us to celebrate the natural line. So in order for us to, artists set up a rhythm, and then they break the rhythm. That becomes the subject. Art, and we spend a lot of time developing an expectation. Once you've established an expectation, your job is to either meet it or fight with it. So if I need if I'm going to do something that has a floral component to it, something that feeds me, if I have something that has a floral component to it, then that's all organic marks. And in order for us to see those organic marks, they stand up better against some man-made object. So when I was doing this computer with this satellite work, what I was seeing was the hard edges of the edge of the film compared to the organic quality of the planet Mars.
The contrast.
Yeah, the contrast. And it's that contrast. So the first thing we do is we give ourselves the rhythm. How are we going to see the subject? Depending on how many dark or light shapes you have and how big they are, you're talking to us about how fast the person goes through and experiences that piece. If you have 50 little shapes, then or 3 big shapes, it's all about speed and time on canvas. And when I teach people to paint, I have nothing to do with painting. It's how do you see and how do people see a two-dimensional surface and how can we manipulate that? Is anyone here a middle child?
You guys can be good artists. We've learned how, I'm a middle child, we've learned how to manipulate our brothers and sisters. As a middle child, if I need attention, all I have to do is say, Kenny, quit hitting me. No, I'm going to yell at my brother. If you just learn how to keep yourself in the center by controlling what's around you. The oldest ones have none of the capacity to manipulate other people, but they don't need it because they're so gifted that they don't ever have to question themselves. And the youngest ones are just great. They never fail at anything. They're really good. They never question themselves. So if you're in the middle, you've got it made. If you're at either pole, you've got to work harder. And the way you have to work is to learn to manipulate the viewer rather than appease the viewer. So if I want to make something exciting, the first thing I'm going to do is find a way for you to look into the piece. So if I have a dark here and a dark here and a light there, then if I can get you, if I can somehow make things tell you to look there, then there's the only place to look. If I can give you a pattern, if I can get anything we want, and I make a face out of this, you're never going to not see the face. No matter what else I do, the face is there. Our brain does this. We look for organization. We see Jesus in toast. I'm Jewish. We see Moses. It doesn't really matter. That's what our brains do. So the more chaotic and the more you understand the icon of communication. So if I'm going to make this shape, it's either going to be a pepper or an apple. That's the icon for it. Once you've established, once I've communicated that, everything else I do about that is ego. Can I do a better apple? Can I make it look like a golden delicious apple? Can I make it look like wine for that? What can I do to this? This is just my ego. And once I've communicated the idea, then my work is done as a storyteller. So the thing that we have to understand is that the story is not the art. The plot line is not where distinctly, I remember it was in a bleak December, and each last something dying ember cast its ghost upon the floor. There was a fireplace. It's cold. That's not the art. The art is the rhythm. Distinctly, I remember it was in the bleak December. The rhythm of the pattern of the music. This is what the artist does: establishes a rhythm, and then they break the rhythm. So the silken sound, a certain rustling of each purple curtain. That's the story. The plot line is the purple curtain. The art word is the repeated sound, the S sound coming back, the rhythm of the word choice. That's what color does, that's what line does, that's what painters do. And as soon as you realize that you're manipulating people and trying to evoke feeling, then you don't have to explain as much. People buy paintings because they're I don't know half of the words of half the Dylan songs I know, or Bruce Springsteen songs. We don't buy music because we know the lyrics. Some of them we do, but most we like the feeling we get. Artists have to work from that. We're not going to buy someone's music if they just utter every word perfectly. We're not going to buy someone's paintings if they describe the world around them. We have to figure out how to tell a story, and that's where.
Well, what would you like to know? Do you want to talk about the retinal?
Oh yeah, that's it all.
Well,
How much time
we did this. We have.
Are you guys bored yet? 5 minutes?
No, we have time.
Okay.
We have time. So do you want to go to this, or do you want to talk the feelings?
We'll go to this. This is a current piece that Carol Hayes, because it's got rocks on it. She's done a rock band. But it's got teeth in it. Sorry, it was teeth. I went to an endodontist or a dentist, and I had something wrong with my teeth. They had to
Dentures?
It was something. I forget what it was. But they gave this bread, so they made this impression of my mouth. And
mold.
Yeah, and then they threw it and was done with it. The dentist don't. They had to throw it in this bucket. And I said, "What do you do with those?" I said, "Oh, it's all right." So I've got all these teeth. It's great. Yeah, they just got numbers, so they don't know what the names are. But if you think about what a tooth is, it's this beautiful natural form. And
figuring out how to use it in my painting. And every time I do it, unfortunately, it looks like Auschwitz. You know? So I haven't been able to figure out how to put the teeth into the piece without. And so I grind them up. I go, but anyway, so and then it's a little too, so I leave it alone. But the natural rhythm. It's like soldiers that have this rhythm, and this is what I'm looking for.
I think we were trying to get at depth, right?
Yeah, well, it's more than that. It's time on canvas. So, if you again, my mantra is that painting is the only art form that doesn't have an element of time built into it. Music has a crescendo, we build to the end. Books, plays, everything has a sequence. It gives the viewer, the participant, the person we're entertaining, gives us time to develop a plot and to crescendo to a climax. Painters don't have that time. We have to do both. We have to first get someone's attention from across the room. That's a certain amount of glitz. You have to look good from across the room. But then when you go up to them and talk to them, they have to talk about more than NASCAR and NFL football. They need to have substance. So the substance comes, and when you look at a painting, the question you should have is not why am I looking at it? The question you should have is why am I still looking at it? And that's what we have to do. And there are 3 or 4 tricks that I've learned over the years. One of them is understanding what we see as beauty. Different colors mixed to the same value is beauty. So if you get complement colors mixed to the same value, then your brain is actually confused. It doesn't see an edge. So our brain will stop and we'll keep working. Everything is cool. Everything is fine. If we see an edge, we stop and try to figure out what that edge is. And if we have an answer, then we judge how good the edge is. If we don't have an answer, then we keep looking for another edge that is going to give us an answer. And our brain keeps moving until we answer. That's how AI is taking visual information and learning how to transfer it. It keeps going through a million different outlets until it says this is it happens instantaneously. Our brain keeps moving until we identify the icon. So if the colors are the same value, we don't see an edge. If you took permanent green light, put it right next to CAD red light, complete opposites. One's bright red, one's bright green. Took a camera photograph of it and put it on mono, you couldn't tell which was which. They have the same value. So if you get colors of the same value next to each other, your brain is going to go back and forth trying to find an edge. I see the color, but I don't see the edge to the color, so I don't know what I'm looking at. What am I looking at? What's he trying to say? And if you don't see it, as soon as you see the edge, we understand what's going to happen. We either go past the edge or go forward. So if you can get different colors mixed to the same value, our brain will be curious. What's going on? That's time on canvas. If you can present work in a way that no one can understand how you did it, if they're curious, their painters are going to keep looking at it until they figure it out. As soon as they figure it out, we don't care anymore. So you have to keep growing. So you have to keep changing that. So everything is done with how quickly people get to the story. And as storytellers, this is where things get the problem. Once you start describing stuff, there's no end to the description. We have very coarse tools, and we want to get really finite descriptions. So it's really a difficult process. The best way to do it is to not go down that road at all, to suggest the icon, let color and application be the beauty. We all have teachers in college who entertained us not because they knew their stuff, but because they jumped up on desks and did, Robin Williams thing in the Great Poets Society, where these people got emotion out of us. It's not because they knew the stuff, it's because they communicated what they do to us. This energy, this excitement.
Talk about this, because that has a lot to do with what you're talking about also in terms of depth.
Yeah, this is, again, part of this manipulation. So one of the games I've been playing for about 20 years now is the idea of looking at the surface and looking behind. And what do you do on the surface and what do you do in front of the surface, behind the surface in order to get the person to, just like color, to bounce front to back. So instead of looking at what you've done, there's enough interest to kind of understand what you've done, but there's something else, what else is behind this, and how do I play back and forth. And so anyone who sees my trees, and I've done lots of trees,
I'm not painting trees, I'm using vertical devices to see what I have to do to look around, how close, how big they have to be, how big they have to be with. Sorry. You're eating dinner, that would be very impressive. How big they have to be in width for us to look around them, and what the spacing is between them before we look at the things or look at what's happening behind the things. And this, now when I was in the 70s, I was living in a house with a bunch of artists. One guy named Joseph Schwartz, he'd take a big canvas and he did this. That's all he did. Black paint on a white canvas and rows of it. He'd get that across here and then he'd do another row like this. This was his art form. And I asked him, what was going on here. And he said, well, he really likes this idea of playing this game of distance. It's sort of like a linguist talking about the tintinnabulation, finding the pattern, the rhythm between the words and the marks. And the mark making aspect of painting is what, as storytellers, is part of our art form. So when we're making marks, we're not making trees, we're making devices, and we look at or look past. Joe was, he got himself institutionalized every spring. And I said, what's up, Joe? And he said, well, I get tired of making decisions. Those are his decisions. How far apart, and I need someone else to tell me what to do once in a while. And one of the reasons that the South was so reticent to develop an enjoyment of art was that, because with art came crazies, green hair, drugs, and Joe, but now things have changed completely. And I think if you look at, if we start looking at our artwork and what we do as stories and storytelling, rather than as picture painting. At least if you start every painting with something in mind, a goal in mind that has nothing to do with the picture, it has something to do with the speed of the person, of the audience looking at it, with something to do with the tension that's derived by the. So if you look at the packing of the trees on the left and the openness on the right, there's a bit of tension that lets us look past into the background, so we have tension on one side, open space on the other. I've found over the years that if you take a flat surface and crunch in one side, get it to support, then you can do anything over here. So first we structure that one side and figure out that's the support. There's a great painting by a guy named Eric Fischel, who's a California painter. He's got this young 14-year-old boy, adolescent boy, in front of a woman who's completely naked, her legs splayed, and the pattern of the fluorescent of the Venetian blinds is cutting across and around her body, and the title of the painting is The Bad Boy. And you think it's because it's this boy looking at this girl, but if you look closely in the shadows, it turns out that Eric Fischel's mother was the first woman of the night, and this 14-year-old boy is going through her purse and taking money. And no one sees it until like 3 or 4 times through the painting, and they're so distracted by what's happening here. So as painters, we have to distract people. We have to tell them this is what's happening, so we're free over here to steal their money. Seriously. And so that's the manipulation that we're talking about. And if you can find a way to get someone to look there, then over there, you can start to have fun. And so if your fun is color, line, form, storytelling, then you have to, for me, what I've been working on recently, and you see before we get to current work, you'll see I'm trying to see that's about the figure. That's a bad one to pick for feeling. Sorry. One of the things I'm doing now is color harmonics. So you're trying to get, if you have a piano and you hit a G chord or a G string, all the other G's echo too, and slightly. The same thing happens in color. If you can find a way to get someone to see color that's not there, that's the height of manipulation. And that's what I try to do.
Okay, you're lost. I'm lost. What do you mean see color that's not there?
Well, if you pluck the G string, you're here making this G move. If I put in that big dark brown, yellow, if you look long and close enough, looking at that orange, the tree on the left becomes violet.
Because it's mixing with your eye, by your eye.
Your eye is the complement. You can't, it absorbs that. It just, so if I can start to do this, nobody knows this. This is just the stuff that I do to keep myself interested.
And one of the things that, if you're really bored, if you're driving in your car and you have a light there, you stop, and you have the person's brakes lights in front of you, look at the brake lights as long as you can if it's a rainy day, and then before the light changes, put your palms on your eyes and push a little bit, and you'll see the direct complement. You see this bright teal. Your retina has the capacity to make the complementary color. If you can fill your vision, a field of vision with a color, it will see the complement. If every time when you're doing landscapes, you're doing anything like this, here's a vertical, whatever, let's say it's a tree, light comes in, hits the tree, bounces back to the ground, and then comes to our eye, light hits the ground, goes to the tree, and then comes back to our eye. There's a little bit of ground coming back to our eye, and a little bit of tree coming back to our eye, depending on where we look. If this tree is bright red, and you're painting this shadow across a gray, you're going to darken the gray to the red tint, but you're also going to put some green in there to make it look real. And that capacity to start to screw with people and let you start to tell an exciting story, add new color, and believably, convincingly, so it doesn't look garish. How do I put in this color so it looks natural? How do I put in color that looks like it belongs there? It really is, it's a storytelling, I think, but it's with color line.
And you talked about feeling a lot as well, right? And then you said explanation is the enemy of feeling. Can you elaborate on that?
Right. Can we get to one, are you controlling, get to one of the current Lake Contender keep? Oh, that's not bad.
Want that one?
Yeah, let's try another
Where
one.
you want that one?
Let's group that one. So, the feeling of that is really nice. He's got nice color. The definition, the description, the explanation is in the middle right now. It needs more explanation or it needs less explanation. If you go back to that one of this painting of Charleston, it was just the right balance. There wasn't enough, there's not enough, this is an earlier stage of the painting, so as the painting progresses.
This is current.
Yeah, so what I'm working on is that little corner, that one corner of the barn, and this is a tiny piece of it. This is about 12 inches of a 66-inch painting, so you can't see the whole thing. But that one little corner should be enough, if I do it right, if I can handle it correctly and I get my grip right, then I should be able to hold that whole paper up, the whole painting up with that corner. That corner should be strong enough and real enough for me to do all of this over here.
Literally, or just from what you're showing here? You're showing something that's such a grabber, it'll be the whole story.
It'll be enough, it'll be a strong enough detail to let you steal their money.
Right in that side.
Yeah, one, no, it's not even this side, that one corner, right there's, and you can't see it. Can you, there's no way you can make a large drawing. There's a beautiful cast shadow across that side of that barn. And that cast shadow to that corner is enough realities to support, in this case, 60 more inches of canvas, of non-resolved canvas. And so that's the game I'm playing, is how much here to support that. Nobody else sees that. It's just a question of that barn looks right or it doesn't look right. I don't care about that as much. I care about it enough to sell it, not enough to. And so rather, and this goes back to the idea of doing a series of work. I don't make this one right. I do another one until and improve on that one, and then I'll do another one and improve on that one. And if you want a body of work, instead of making one perfect, you do 10, 15 paintings to see the perfection, see the progress. That's the body of work. It's not 15 of the same ideas. It's the same idea done 15 different times, getting more resolution, getting closer to the story you're trying to tell each time. Because if we did it right away, we would get bored. If you're really good at something, if we understand it right away, it becomes a hat hanger very quickly. It just becomes a piece of furniture. And as painters, that's what we have to do. That balance between explanation and feeling is not a hard edge. It's not a static edge.
Very difficult to achieve.
It depends on your own ability to find it.
But how do you teach that?
You don't. You just slowly get there. You get people, interested in themselves long enough to realize that
So I think part of this is self-discovery as well.
Zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance. It has nothing to do with fixing a motorcycle. I try not to teach people a process. Here we go. For me, the world of art is a beautiful walk on the beach. And if you're looking at your footprints, which for the artwork is your footprint, it's the residue of your walk. For most of us, the art is our footprints. You know, we look at we're turning around, analyzing our footprints. That has nothing to do with what art is. Art is you looking around the world and absorbing it. What comes out of you as what you've passed is the artwork. By the time the work I'm doing today is the best work I've ever done. You know, it's the one I'm most excited in because I don't have to turn around and see it. You know, it's still in front of me, and that's what we want to do when we paint. We want to continually push ourselves to the point where we're not performing, we're not measuring. And if you paint long enough, you can outperform. You know, you develop skills, so you exercise these skills, and people like them. But that's not what keeps you painting. What keeps you painting is what am I seeing? Why am I seeing that? And those are two really good questions, by the way, and where you're in the woods, it's like, or anywhere. What am I seeing, and then why am I seeing that? So you have, you know, when you're, there's things you can, there are apps you can get, Jacob over here with stepson, there's an app you can get that tells you where the passage of the sun, you know, during the day, we're looking for where to put this plant, how much sunlight is going to hit. This app will tell you right there. You know, you have to have enough curiosity to know where to put that plant, to know that interest to find how much sun is going to. We have to do that when we paint. I learned more about painting landscapes, fishing, trout, fly fishing than I did painting.
Really?
You know, where do you put the fly? Why is it there? Why is the water moving there? Really cool. You ready for this? This is a fun little game. Okay. So here's the stream. We're looking at a satellite view of it. The stream meanders, it floods, it spring comes, straightens out, all the water rushes down, the water gets drier, and they get little pockets. They're the names of these little pockets. But in the process of doing this, we realize that if this is we're looking downstream and the water's coming this way. The bank on this side, the water is going to come this way. The root system is going to be eroded, and the trees are leaning in across the water. On this side, directly across from it, because if the water goes like this, then our stream is going to go like this. It's going to have everything's going to be directly across the stream. So if this side, the roots are being undermined, the trees lean in. This side's very shallow. Trees and weeds go up on this side straight up. These come in, and the next turn, it's just the opposite. Those trees go in, and this side is straight up and down. Nobody's going to teach you this. You're a fisherman. But if you're going to make a landscape, damn, you have to understand why you're doing it. It's not that you're going to do that. It's how can I make a line that's believable? How can I make... And so this is where all this cool stuff comes in. Fibonacci ratio is a natural ratio. You want to start to, if a line is moving back in space, you want it to come back, even though it doesn't happen, you want it to come back in this ratio where this is to this space, this is to this space, this is to this. This knuckle is to this knuckle, this knuckle is to that knuckle is to this. That's what lets us make a fit. That's how ferns grow. If we can break our canvas up into these shapes, or these distances, it's a sense of agreement, it's a sense of calm and peace, and it lets us get away with more. Because I've lulled you to sleep over here.
No.
Yeah. Not literal. This is a current piece. It's a part of the current piece. And so this is the toilet. It's one where the explanation, the color is so nice that, it's sunk, it's pretty. And it's never going to get any substance. The story's never going to get past Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. It's a sweet little thing. It's a huge painting, by the way. But it just got too pretty too soon, and that's tough. If someone's going to love it, it's great, it'll sell. But in terms of I'm not going to fix it because this is where it is. I'll just try not to get that way again.
Okay.
And that's if
I need to bring up a couple things.
Okay.
You had talked about popularity, and we talked about social media and Instagram, and you said, sometimes we judge our work based on the likes, and you said,
Yeah, I try not to look at social media at all, just because it's, well, Instagram right now, artists look at Instagram. And so you're looking at your own work and other people, so it's a pretty safe area. But for the most part, I don't want to put anything out there that I don't want to see the reaction of the public. It's too powerful. And if you do what people would like you to do, then you're really not exploring. People don't want to think. And so they want to be entertained. And so pretty colors, and for that entertainment is fine. But in terms of me making it, I would lose energy pretty quickly. So my advice would be to, here's again, it's always easier to do anything other than paint. Always easier. And one of the reasons I shy away from art groups is that it's always easier to come and listen to me talk than it is to be in the studio painting right now. It's always easier to have a meeting and do this than it is to paint. What happens is alone to you in the studio. The more time you're there, the more energy you're going to produce. And the more, after almost 50 years now, I'm able to have a transition. I come home and kick the dog, and, transition from being in my own mind to being with other people and doing things. But every time I finish a workshop, it takes me 3 days to recover just from being nice to that many people. So if you're responding to your likes, it's the same thing. You're being nice to a lot of people, and it's a lot of pressure.
so we talk about, in the Guild, we talk about, AI produced things doesn't belong in a show, but you were talking about the use of AI being very useful for certain things. And I think, John, you had a workshop or whatever you opened at one of the Carolina Place. I think you were talking about how you even have a relationship with AI. I mean, I use AI all the time, but not for creation of art. Talk to me
You say
about.
you do use AI, John?
I use AI to kind of help formulate ideas and images, and then I paint a drawing from those as a reference.
I've been doing that recently too, and I loaded up a bunch of older work and then newer work, and asked Claude, I said, can you tell me what the next step is? And Claude has gone back. But I also have had some very profound conversations. It's amazing, this AI, how surface it can be and how incredibly deep it can be. And I don't know how much of that is because I see it as deep, or how much of that is really, is it thought? I don't know. It's very interesting. But as soon as we have AI run long enough for it to be a tool rather than an end, then it's going to be really helpful for us.
And the other thing, then we kind of all ask questions. I wanted to, because we talked about being a warrior.
Oh, yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit, being a warrior?
This is one of the things that I had a great 3-hour conversation with AI about this. So, so this is 1970, I guess, 1975, and we went out in the streets and we ended the war. Those that had long hair, and McNamara didn't concede that it was his fault yet, but he was going to. But we got out of Vietnam in 63, the draft ended in 73, the draft ended in 73. 10 years
Speak
before that.
louder over here so these people can hear.
10 years before that, last 10 years, we went from assassinations and human rights issue and feminist issues to, in 75, we had power. The people had power. Some kids were being shot at Kent State, but that turned into, another series of power. We had so much reason to be optimistic and so much freedom. It was all about freedom. That freedom is what gives us the. What was the question?
Be a warrior.
So in that period of time, I'm reading, as artists, all the artists were changing things. Was it Nicolas Cage climbing into the piano and plucking the strings? Brian Eno is doing harmonics that are insane. Erica John is writing vagina monologues. We're breaking, dance, Alvin Ailey. So much is changing. The whole world of arts is changing in front of us. This is the world I was born into. This is the world I wanted to be an artist in. And it's, you know, the world is very different right now. What was the question? I lost it.
Be a warrior.
Yeah. So in that period of time, there was a guy named Carlos Castaneda who wrote a series of treatises for a graduate school project. One of them is A Separate Reality. It's a great, here we go, look at this, Separate Reality.
You had me buy it.
Hey, read it.
I had to.
Read it. So here's the takeaway from this, all right? Take your fingers, hold them about shoulder width apart. Well, do this, right about here. Now relax your vision enough, your eyes will start to cross, and eventually you're going to get the two fingers to, it'll take a few minutes, relax. Maybe if you get help it, maybe move them a little closer. But let your eyes cross, and eventually you're going to find this third finger snap in the middle between those two other fingers. It'll take maybe 2 more minutes, but I've got time. So just relax your blades. You see, you got 4 fingers now.
Yeah.
You want to get those 2 middle fingers to join each other. And that's the basis of this book. It's real, but it doesn't exist. It's there, but it's based in reality. It follows the rules of physics, but it doesn't exist. And he did a whole series of treatises on this. And part of this is, at the same time, Suzanne Vega was, remember a song that she did called Looking for the Straight Lines? I tore the lampshades off the lamp, I'm looking for the truth. You know, it's getting rid of all the extraneous stuff and looking for the truth. As painters, we have to, if we're really interested in finding this out, we need to spend this time to learn our truths, whatever they are. And it doesn't mean that other people appreciate it. It means actually just the opposite. You exist by yourself.
It's very personal.
Yeah, hugely personal. And it doesn't happen because you want it to happen. It happens because you're there. It happens because you work for it.
Participating.
How long did it take you to get your fingers together, get your life together like that? It's even harder. So you need to believe in something that, Carol and I went to see someone talk, I can't remember the guy's name, he was a writer, and he was talking about one of the big breakthroughs in the human species was, I can't remember what the catalyst was, but we were living long enough for there to be grandparents. And grandparents were where wisdom was passed along. People were dying in their 20s or 30s, and there wasn't enough time for their children who were too young to learn. But by the time we had grandparents, then the society was old enough for us to start to pass wisdom along, and then we started to move forward. And when you think about life this way, when you think about the forest instead of the trees, and the likes, full circle, the likes we get on Instagram are trees. It's not the forest. There's nothing real about that. It's just what's there in front of you. But when you have something to think about that's deeper and more inclusive, that's a reason to spend this much time in your life doing something. I mean, when I was a kid, I'm in my 30s. I met Carol when I was 38, so I was 35. I'm living in a place that doesn't have a bathroom. My brother told my parents not to come and visit me because they were too depressed. My one meal is I can get 5 hot dogs for $1.25 across the street, so that's my one meal a day. Love hot dogs still. And you know this, and I did this for 26 years. You know, why? You know, what was there about this that was so powerful? You know, that we can do in a slideshow. You know, it's about this discovery. It's about how do you use this magnificent art form to learn about yourself and to learn about the world around you. It's the one thing you've decided you do. Do it. You know, don't let other people tell you what's right or wrong. And we have to sell it, but you don't have to sell it. Well, the only reason you have to sell it, if you're taking my classes, the only reason you need to sell is because you want some kind of validation out through sales. Or you have a lot of extra space, you know, you got too many campuses built up, so you have to clear the space out. But you can give them all, don't worry about that. But if you've spent this time to develop a skill, then that skill has nothing to do with painting. It has to do with access to a deeper world. And this is the last thing I promise. The only time as humans that we give ourselves permission to plumb the depths of our thinking is through tragedy, death, or loss of some kind. As artists, we have to learn how to do that when we walk in the studio. We have to get deep by walking in the door. It takes years to develop that. One of the things when I lived in the studio back in the day, I was embarrassed about living in the studio, so I would have a routine. First thing I do is I'd wake up and I'd clean my one pot, my one cup, my one fork, roll up my futon. That process was transitioning me. When I was ready to paint, it took about an hour. I go to the gym. By the time I was ready to paint, I was ready to work. My head was there. Today, I still have a dartboard in my studio. I use it every day. And that last shoulder surgery, I'm not quite where I want to be yet. But about noon, maybe 1 o'clock, I stop painting and I shoot around the darts. And I always try for the trip 20, which is one little spot. I don't really want to get it, but I really try to get it. And every other dart, I have about 9. Normally when you play darts, you have 3, I have about 9 of them. I want every other dart to follow the path of the first dart. And if I find myself correcting myself, it's low into the left, I have to compensate, it's high into the right, I have to compensate. My brain is already too analytical to create. I can still paint, but I can't do the creative stuff. I gotta do edges, I gotta do finishing stuff, I gotta do the explanation. I can't do the feelings if I'm analyzing. This is what I meant by feelings are the enemy, are the enemy of explanation. Explanation is the enemy of feelings. That dart going in the triple 20 is too much of an explanation. I want to get, my brain isn't capable right now. And I can't go back. It's like, oh, I'm done for the day, I'll do something else. I'll finish this painting, I'll paint these edges, I'll talk to this gallery. But for that 3 hours from 9 to 12, and then I'll throw the darts. If I'm lucky, if I can go another hour, I'll do it. Maybe till 2, but that's it.
Fascinating.
And so it's really, and that comes from that warrior process I did 30, 40 years ago. You know, that ability to strip all that other stuff away for just the 3 hours in that studio. It drives Carol like crazy because she thinks I was a mistress. You know, it's like, it's where I have to go though. And without that 3 hours, I'm aware. You can't live with me. I need that because it's, I spent my lifetime getting there. And it has nothing to do with the art. The art is the excuse to get there. And Kathy, how long have you been painting?
Me?
Yeah.
2000.
Okay.
2,000 years.
She looks good, doesn't she?
26 years. Yeah, that's the answer.
Yeah, 26 years. So
26.
you're just, you're just about the time when you can start to question, well, why am I doing this? And there's got to be more to it than this. You're at the right point. This is, it has nothing to do with what you're painting. It's why you're painting.
I don't have that many years left.
Yes, you do. All it takes is one year. Anyone else have questions? Come on, spit them out. Yes, we'll throw some.
What's the name of the book you're holding?
This is Separate Reality by Carlos Castaneda.
I still didn't get it.
I would read it. I would also read something called The Search for the Real by Hans Hoffman. It's a pamphlet about this big. I've passed out about 80 of them. Skip right to the section on culture and the arts, on culture and on painting. It's about 30 pages. Each paragraph will take 6 or 7 years to understand. But it's worth it. Stick with it.